Honorable Advisor, Dr. Mushur Rahman, Ambassador Bhatia, and distinguished colleague, Mustafiz Bhai. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I think we had a very good discussion. Now, as I see the title, it's a 50 years reflections and hopefully looking ahead 50 years, which will be 2071. So that's how I see this. Now, what I'll do, I'll try and in terms of reflecting on the 50 years, sort of share or recall some of the big markers in terms of our relationship, and then see where we stand currently and what that we should be moving forward. I was very intrigued by Dr. Patnaik's the whole narrative issue, because that's where I thought I will zoom in at the end, the perceptions, the reality, and the narratives. So thank you very much for flagging the upstream. In terms of our relationship, and Dr. Mushur Rahman has been the part of the history, so it's always tricky to say things in front of him, but I'll nevertheless try. But this is one of those rare relations which Bangabandhu himself nurtured. So that's something very dear to the Bangladeshis. And in many ways he tried and shaped the relationship. Dr. Patnaik has written on it. On arrival, he has said that this is Bangabandhu arrived in Kolkata, and in the open field, he said that it's a special relationship, it's a friendliest relationship, it's a long-standing relationship which is called enduring and eternal. But he also, responding to the journalist after landing in Dum has said a very interesting thing. He said, the Indians is our brothers. So he has really taken out the state-to-state relationship to the people-to-people relationship, which often we miss, because he knew that there will be changes in government and all kinds of things, but the Indians will continue to remain brothers to us because of the sacrifices that they have made in the war of liberation. So that's very important. And the other marker I will come in, and since Mustafiz Rahman sir, Dr. Mushur Rahman has already zoomed in on the 2010 and 2011, and I want to build on that and take you to 2017, where two Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Prime Minister Modi has, I think, revisited the narrative of the relationship based on the Bangabandhu's one, and I'll read it. And it continually fascinates me. Maybe since we were party to this thing, so it resonates more than something else. And I quote from the 2017 communique, quote, "Relations between India and Bangladesh are based on fraternal ties and reflective of an all-encompassing partnership based on sovereignty, equality, trust, and understanding," which Dr. Pravir has been trying to bring in. And that goes beyond strategic partnership. I see that's the catchword. So, we have strategic partnership with many countries. I don't want to name, but, at the time we already had that described, and said that in that way, how do we then sort of create a narrative which will take us forward in terms of strategic relations? Even we said, it's beyond strategic relationship, it's above strategic relationship, because we have shedded blood together. So that's, I think, is very important, and which Dr. Jaishankar recently has again reiterated. He said, it's not a classical relationship. It transcends what you call the orthodox relationship. So that's how the narrative has been built. Now, these are narrative of the state that we have to keep in mind, because we will come back at the end and say that, where is the mismatch? Second point, serving for 7 years as the Foreign Secretary, I have realized that Bangladesh-India relationship is at the center of Bangladesh's foreign policy. It is not only in the context of bilateral relationship, in the context of foreign policy gestures on all aspects, whether we go to the NAM or we go to the OIC or we go to New York, Security Council, wherever you go, that is central to our policy making, decision-making process. That we have to keep in mind. And I haven't, during my 7 years, I haven't seen any departure. We have always tried and coordinated with the Indian foreign policy making, both in New York and Geneva and others. So that's really important, and that has been also, I think, in the opening statement, Ambassador Bhatia has said that it's not a bilateral relationship, it's a relationship in the context of India-Pacific. I think that is a new narrative that we see coming out from at least from India. I don't know how it is coherent in our part of the world. So that's very important. So on now the question is, we have best of the best relationship. Let's not have doubt, at least at the state level, at the political level. Now the question is, what that we see next 50 years, 2071. I'm sure that in 2071, our next generation of panelists will be sitting and dissecting as to what has happened the way we are doing now. Now, future is always uncertain and always unknown, and sometimes even unknowable. So within that parameter, we will try and see how we want to place the next 70 years. Now, Bangladesh-India relationship evolves within the broader geopolitics. And that's where it comes in the whole issue of, is it only Bangladesh-India typical bilateral relationship, or we are thinking of having an alliance holding each other's hand and moving on to the bigger world? So that's the question. And if you want to do that, how do you do that? Is there enough coherence? Is there coherence when we try and play in a bigger field? How much is our relationship in coherence in terms of our national interest? Is it automatically happen, or it has to be nurtured? So that's the question. It has to be nurtured. If you do not nurture, the divergence will continue to emerge. But look at some of the European countries. They continue to hammer on their national interest vis-a-vis the geopolitics or global politics, and that's how they have a joint position. And it goes through a whole influence exercise. So that's important in terms of next 50 years. The second question is, 50 years to be successful, we have to have an investment in the relationship. Now, it is not, I know Professor Mustafiz has been talking about connectivity, investment, economics. That's fine, that we need that. But there has to be a political investment from both ends. And political investment is critical. As a diplomat, I have learned that you cannot have economics, you cannot have development unless you have political good, warm relationship. Simple as that. Simple as that. So that is the narrative I think we still need to work in. So we need an adequate and an appropriate political relationship, adequate and appropriate political relationship to have bigger economic relationship in the global context. Now, one of the issues has always haunted me, that despite so much of a goodwill at the political level, why it hasn't translated into functional level, economic level, and others level? Why did it took so long to have the connectivity things coming into our mind? Wasn't it there before the partition? Yes. So why it took so long for us to realize? Because the political understanding, the consensus wasn't perhaps there, or not expressed properly. Now, next 50 years, as we cannot see, but at least we can set some factors which will guide next 50 years of a relationship. In my humble way, I'll share with you. The first factors, principles, is the peace and stability, particularly in the bordering areas. That's very critical for Bangladesh, at least. Border killing has been a killer of our relationship. I have said it long 7 years, that bring it to zero. One death involves the whole village, and then we have all bad narrative. So that's one. Peace and stability, particularly in the bordering areas. Collaboration and joint projects for a win-win situation. Win-win spirit is there, but sometimes the narrative is so wrong that either of us do not see that we all are gaining out of it. They said, there's always a feeling that the other party is gaining more than us. We don't need it. So if that we cannot address, then we have next 50 years almost status quo the way we are doing things. And I've seen it in my own career, how that continues to harm us. And the third principle is, do no harm to anyone, anywhere in the region. Please do not do harm. If you cannot do good, that's also fine, because of the national interest, but do no harm, both within the relationship and outside the relationship. It has happened in the past. I'm not talking about Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's period, but if you look at the history, we have done harms to each other. That we have to say no longer. Even if it hurts our national interest, we just cannot do harm to our neighbor in any way, in any sense, trade, economy, So, and no negative narrative. If you do not have a negative narrative, that's also good. We don't have a narrative. We don't have something to showcase. But let's not have negative narrative, both sides. And I hope you know what I'm trying to hint at. Because I also participate in global discussions, and Bangladesh-India relationship comes up, and somebody in the crowd always raises that quote, and that puts me absolutely flat on my toes. So that's narrative. You have to be very, even if it is for political convenience. So that's the fifth one. Now, I know there has been a lot of talks on the connectivity. Connectivity is a method. It creates a platform, but it doesn't bring in result for people. So connectivity for some purpose. Connectivity has to be defined in terms of its outcome, not only in terms of creating railroads and other things. That's I had always looked at. Now, I'm coming to the conclusions. New areas of cooperation. Professor Mustafiz, Professor Praveer, even Gautam has talked about all kinds of a collaboration. Let me take cognizance of all those. Those are important and critical, but there are new areas which I think we should take note of in terms of our next 50 years. New supply and value chain in terms of using our connectivity in the health, trade, and tourism. That in the into the COVID-19 period is very critical. Europe is looking at it. Instead of looking 1,000 miles away, you look to your next door and see whether you can create a new value chain. That's one. Second is advancing technology and innovation cooperation. We always push that behind, but that's an area where you can help people understanding how critical the collaboration is and what you call new narrative that comes out of the student's mouth. Now, it may be very hypothetical, a little aggressive, but if we have in the bordering area a training center, an university, technological university, where students and teachers from both ends will come and teach, and a joint certificate will come out, that will create a different kind of a generation who will grow up like Europe. You have 1 year in Netherlands and 1 year in UK, you get a joint certificate, and you have broader opportunities to operate. So that has to come out if you have to have people buying your narrative. The water resources, which Moshur sir has nicely and very diplomatically pointed out, that continue to remain a sore point in our relationship. And I'm glad that finally the whole issue of integrated river basin management is taking bit of an anchor in the Indian side. That we have been saying, Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin. It's all the different rivers, it's the same basin that Dr. Mushir Rahman and others have been saying, let's do that. But that will also change the narrative. People's mind, we'll not talk about 50-50 Tista. We'll talk about bigger issues of a co-management. Aren't we able to take that step? Then it comes the whole issue of port and shipping. I don't need to really go into that. Common threats, climate change and disaster management. That's an area where we can really work together. Taking even Bay of Bengal or Sundarban, just solid. And Bangladesh is pioneer in inventing a lot of things in terms of adopting and managing climate change. We are a recognized pioneer in that. Our Prime Minister has been leading this. Where is that, other than the solar energy, where is that collaboration in terms of our bilateral relations? These are places where we can have new narratives. Collaboration in the Bay of Bengal, I'll stop with it because I think Dr. Patnaik has already talked about the blue economy. There's a huge opportunities. The question is, are we ready to take that opportunity or not? And there we need a political investment, not money investment. It's a political investment. And in this, I fully agree that you have to take people with you. How do you do that? When the perception doesn't help you, when the reality is different and the perception is different, and that bad perception or wrong perception or misperception is creating the narrative, what do you do as a state? You have very little scope. And I'm sure that you understand what that in mean. And that is why I'm saying that, let's do political investment in the relationship, create new narrative with the people in their education, in their day-to-day life, peaceful border. These are the things. With this, I'll stop. Sorry for taking little more time than I should have. Thank you.